All right, if you don't know, there was a shooting at an ICE facility earlier today in Texas. It's crazy. This wasn't bigger news, but I guess shootings just aren't a big deal in America anymore. But this thing smells fishy as fuck. We're going to talk about it, but let us all just observe this with healthy skepticism, because I don't trust anything coming out of Kash Patel's FBI and his loser lion mouth, and I don't trust any of these fucking Republicans. Sorry. So we're going to go into it, but we're going to talk about it, but we are going to have our skeptical hat on, because I don't trust these mother effers, to be completely honest, and you're going to see why in just a moment, because the evidence that was left behind is very suspect. It's very suspect. But before we get to that, if you could please hit like on this video, and we're almost at 900,000 subscribers, and you hitting subscribe is free and can help us reach that goal so much faster. Thanks. Let's get to this. But here is just the quickest of quickest backgrounds of what happened. A detainee was killed and 2 others were wounded in Dallas ICE shooting. Investigators said anti-ICE language was found on ammunition left behind by the gunman, who died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. An official familiar with the matter identified the attacker as a 29-year-old man. And here is what the FBI had to say about this. The FBI, by the way, led by, let's just put a exclamation point on this, led by Kash Patel.
What I can also share with you is that early evidence that we've seen from rounds that were found near the suspected shooter contain messages that are anti-ICE in nature. Again, this is just the most recent example of this type of attack. This will be a whole of government response. There will be no resource not utilized to bring all those individuals who are responsible to bring them to justice and to hold them accountable.
All right, you're going to see in just a moment that anti-ICE messaging is very, very suspicious. But here is more of the FBI said, and they refuse to say whether or not the people who were killed were detainees. We've now learned that they are.
About some of the evidence you mentioned earlier, just for clarity, I think there's going to be a lot of questions. Our understanding is that some of the shell casings had specific writing that was relevant to the voting. Can you give us more information?
So I'm not going to go into any more details at this time. We will come back to you when we have more details to share. Again, our goal here will be transparency as those details become available, but we are still in the early stages of an investigation. Information is still coming in. When we have more details, we will come back to this group. I'm not going to be identifying victims at this time. The only thing I will confirm at this time is no law enforcement was injured. Certainly you can respect law enforcement's need to make notifications. At this point in time, we're not going to take any additional questions from law enforcement. Again, I'd like to ask.
All right, so as you heard in there, no law enforcement individuals were killed, only detainees were killed. So what the right is trying to do is turn this into another act of political violence. But it's very interesting, as Aaron Rupar says here, the FBI is refusing to say whether the people who were killed today at an ICE facility in Dallas were detainees, but they were confirming that no law enforcement officials were injured. It's very strange that they would do that, and we would now know that law enforcement officials weren't killed and it were detainees that were killed. Now, Ted Cruz, I'm not going to play you his clip, but he tried blaming this on Democrats. He said that the rhetoric that is critical of ICE and Democrats calling Republicans fascist, that's the reason why the shooting happened today. Without any information, without any evidence, just spreading this information. What's eventually going to happen is someone who is left-leaning is either going to be seriously injured or killed by someone that they are amping up. That's where this is all heading. They're being so irresponsible. The vice president did the same fucking thing. It is so irresponsible. No one on the left is saying anything that would stoke violence against someone else. And if someone does commit violence against anyone, it is more likely than not because they're not right in the head. But what Republicans are doing are guaranteeing that someone who is not right in the head gets the message that people on the left need to be taken care of. That's what they're doing. All right, Now, we also have here, this is the evidence of FBI Director Kash Patel says this. This is so long. But while the investigation is ongoing, an initial review of the evidence shows an ideological motive behind the attack. See photo below. One of the unspent shell casings recovered was engraved with the phrase anti-ICE. More updates will be forthcoming. And then he just makes the judgment call. These despicable, politically motivated attacks against law enforcement are not a one-off. We are only miles away from Prairie Land, Texas, where just 2 months ago an individual ambushed a separate ICE facility targeting their officers. So he's just connecting this with, there's no information. It's so irresponsible because it could be a crazy person who's also like, oh, I just want to keep ginning up the political violence. And it could be someone that is basically like the Joker and just trying to make just a nihilist, trying to make sure that everyone wants to hurt each other even more. We don't know. Or it could be, and I would not hold it past him. Sorry, I'm going to say it. Anti-ICE written here in pen. It's very, very suspect to me. Like, wouldn't it be fuck ICE or something like that? Anti-ICE and in pen. Aaron Rupar says, this is the fistiest shit I've ever seen. We're supposed to believe the shooter wrote anti-ICE in pen on a bullet and then shot detainees, but not ICE officers. Yeah, keep in mind, anti-ICE, but shot the detainees, not ICE officers. That person could be a terrible shot, but only shooting detainees? I think you'd have to only be aiming at the detainees. Now, this is, again, very irresponsible. We have acting ICE Director Todd Lyons saying it wasn't directed at the detainees. It wasn't directed at civilians of the street. It was a definite attack on law enforcement. That is just not true. As I showed you at the top, the only people who are injured he's straight up lying on national TV. Now, J.D. Vance said this about the shooting.
This country in the last couple of weeks, and that was true maybe until this morning, because I don't know if you all have followed the news, and we're still learning a little bit about it. But what we know is that in Dallas, Texas, an ICE facility, an Immigrations and Customs Enforcement facility, was opened fire upon by a violent left-wing extremist, a person who wrote anti-ICE messaging on their bullets. And there's some evidence that we have that's not yet public, but we know this person was politically motivated. They were politically motivated to go after law enforcement. They were politically motivated to go after people who are enforcing our border.
We don't know that. We don't fucking know that. How dare you? How dare you? So irresponsible. How am I a YouTuber and I'm more responsible around this stuff than the fucking FBI or the vice president? He actually got community noted, which means that they gave more context around his statements, because he said the same thing here. This attack on law enforcement, blah, 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 must stop. And then community note says, according to ICE spokesperson, the 3 individuals shot were ICE detainees, leaving 2 individuals dead and 1 injured. No law enforcement were injured in this shooting, according to law enforcement and news reports out of Dallas, Texas. And then John Favreau says the vice president is not a reliable source of information. This is now the 5th or 6th time he's posted a political take contradicted by facts from his own law enforcement agencies. And then he went into like a tweet battle with John Favreau, which is just so, like, you're the vice president and you're tweeting. That's what you're doing at a podcaster. Anyways, they got into it, and I think it's below us all to even have to look at it. Anyways, and someone put it like this, and I kind of agree. So the FBI is saying they found rounds near the shooter that had anti-ICE messages in a shooting where only the victims are detainees. Interesting, very interesting. There's something up. And again, here's the New York Times saying that 3 people shot at ICE facility, and they're confirming that they were detainees, not law enforcement. No federal agents were shot, but detainees were among the victims. And I'm going to end with this joke, because maybe it's just good to end with a joke. Bullet casing with the word Tylenol found at ICE shooting. Trump declares autism a terrorism organization. We are truly living in the stupidest timeline. The stupidest, most dangerous. Well, thanks for watching. If you like this video, please hit like. If you're not subscribed, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time. Bye.